Hello and welcome to Open Room Talks, a podcast which draws on open room events experiencing connecting people to bring you quality discussions between industry experts, innovative suppliers, and high-powered end users on pertinent issues in a variety of sectors. I am Kiana Sapp, and joining me today to discuss how the fuel retail sector has been adapting to all that's going on in the world, I have Keith Guppy and Steve Watts. Keith is a fuel retail professional with over 30 years' experience in downstream refining, sales, and marketing. He has held a variety of senior management positions with Amoco and Elf across all channels of business, including refining, logistics, and retail. In 2004, Keith co-designed and launched Big Oil, a web-based market intelligence service to the independent forecourt sector. This successful business was purchased by the Petrol Retailers Association in 2007, fulfilling the exit strategy. Keith currently works as a consultant specializing in engagement with key areas of the downstream market in the UK and some parts of Europe. Steve has been in the petrol retail industry for 41 years. He made his start in 1979 with pump maintenance after an engineering apprenticeship as a service engineer looking after the petrol stations in North London and Hertfordshire. He then joined Electronic Specialist in 1984, where he completed a management training program and finally gained the position of service director until their acquisition by Gilbarco, now GVR. Steve worked for a while as the UK sales director with GVR, but then left to join a systems company called Torex. Through acquisition, Steve joined TSG in 2018 as UK sales director, where he heads up the retail and systems business lines. Thank you both very much for agreeing to come on the show. The floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, just a bit of background to how I've met Steve and knew Steve right from the start. I think it was probably when I was at Elf, I think, Steve, we would have probably first met, and you were at Gilbarco.
That's correct. I think it was, Steve.
Yeah, I was sort of looking after the retail network of Elf, and Gilbarco were our service company, I believe. And I have to say, without sort of blowing smoke and all of that, I think after you left, Steve, the service at Gilbarco was never the same, because I have to say it was first class when we were using you for service. But I think that's when we first met.
Yeah, and that's another pint I owe you then.
Yes, absolutely. And then we kind of brings us up to the current day, and you're now at TSG. Like you were at Gilbarco, TSG has been a kind of household name in the fuel industry since then. And I'm just interested to know that since things have changed so drastically this year, how things have been at TSG during the lockdown and kind of beyond.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's crazy times for everybody, isn't it? And still uncertainties out there. I think when it started to kick off, as it were, in mid-March, when we understood what the possible implications were with a total lockdown. I think first and foremost, health and safety to our staff and customers were at the forefront. And we put together a number of documents to make sure that we were covering and keeping our staff and customers safe. I think because we were seen as the front line, as it were, by keeping tankers moving and freight moving and the public sector moving, then our servicing department really didn't change. On our fleet side, we have the likes of the blue lights, so the police, ambulance, fire brigade that we look after. And again, of course, that is paramount that they're kept fueling, along with the 4,000 odd sites that we have under service contract. So, yeah, difficult times, but health and safety was the forefront. And I'm pleased to say that we came through that with flying colours.
Well, that's good to know. And I see it was something when we were having a brief chat earlier in the week, and you mentioned something, an innovation you've come up with to kind of help with the retailers in terms of is it a customer counter type?
Yeah, it is, Keith. I think one of the things we've picked up on talking to the number of retailers that we have good relationships with is that there's this lack of confidence by the consumer to come into some of the C stores. And that's understandable. I mean, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that are still, even afraid to go outside their houses, let alone go into one of the smaller C stores or into one of the smaller areas. So part of our innovation and part of our technical team, we've come up with what is predominantly a system that allows you to set the amount of customers you have in your store, and via a camera positioned above the entry and exit points, we will count the customers as they come in and leave. And should that number exceed the safety number that's been set, then there is a visual display on the entrance of the store that actually will warn customers not to enter. And that is a visual as well as an audible warning. So, but along with that, added to that, it also runs as an advertising screen. So you can run promotions, you can run information. So if customers are queuing up outside, there's something that they can occupy their time while they're waiting, rather than what they don't want, what the retailer doesn't want, clearly, is the customer to see a queue and then turn around and walk away. We're hoping that that's going to be something that's going to be of great benefit to the retailers, and we're just about to pilot that system now.
It's very interesting. And it was funny, and it was only yesterday I went down to our local C store, and you're right. I mean, they've all got notices up saying so many people in the shop at one time, but how do you know? You can't tell, and there you've got people peering through the door to see how many people are already in there. So I could see that being very useful, Steve, going forward. And it kind of leads me into another bit that's interesting to chat through is that, we come out the other side of this, and I think what we're going to find is, consumer behavior will have definitely changed. We it's been forced on us, but I think now we've got it, I think it will stay with us. And I'm thinking of things like mobile payments and the way you get your loyalty points, and also even things like pay at the pump. You've already mentioned the digital side of your customer counter, but there are other digital applications that you could apply here. So, what's the view within TSG on this? Is this something that's right at the forefront of your minds there when you're developing stuff?
It is, and systems is part of the business that on the sales side is that I head up. With my systems background, it was something that I was keen to bring to TSG, and I've got around me an extremely first class team that innovation is part of their core practices. So they're looking at new ideas and ways of automating and speeding up the actual retail experience. And part of that is, and we're seeing that out there with some of the oil companies, is mobile payment apps, and we have our own for that. We also have crypto, which is the pay at pump solution. So the customer doesn't have to go into the store itself if they don't want to. There are other means of going in and purchasing fuel. But along with that, we've also got a full suite of contactless payment solutions as well as coin solutions. But we're seeing more on the contactless side for obvious reasons. But now we can control the payment side for anything on the valet side, so wash machines, air machines, and also within the store itself. For the coffee machines, as an example, we have a solution that allows you to pay for the coffee at the coffee machine rather than getting your coffee and taking it to the counter and again queuing up and having to pay through that means.
And where are TSG now in terms of their point of sale, EPOS point of sale, back office type platforms?
Our own platform is FuelPOS,
right?
And it links to a number of back office solutions that we support. And I've got to say, Keith, I mean, I know we weren't together at Arcaris or what turned into be Torex, but when you were there, you knew what the innovations of what the Iridium Prism system was like.
Yep.
And I have to say that, having joined TSG and got to grips with fuel pods, there isn't really anything missing. I mean, it is up there with all of the top quality EPOS solutions. And Dover, who are the developing company for fuel pods, really use all of their European expertise to come forward with new ideas and technologies for the system.
Yeah, and in these days, systems have very much got to be able to integrate into a whole range of other applications, haven't they? I mean, if you've got to look at world-beating loyalty schemes, you've got to be able to interface into those kind of things. So I take it does all of that now.
Yes, indeed, as well as having our own. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on is that we can provide that full solution or work with third parties to bring together what is best for the retailer. So if a retailer has got their own standards and requirements, we can work with that. But if they're looking for that complete package, then again, we can present that to them, and hopefully that will meet their requirements.
Yeah, interesting. And another area I wanted to touch on whilst we're having a chat about this, because we've been around a long time, and unmanned filling stations have been muted in the industry for a number of years, and for whatever reason, when you look at how they grew in countries like in the Scandinavian regions, that never really started to get traction. But we've just noticed now in the last couple of years that the unmanned solution is starting to sort of take hold. And I was interested in this year's fuel market review that Catalyst put out every year, but I noticed the numbers are going up. We've got 272 now, and I know a lot of those are Asda stores, 130 odd are Asda stores, but it's definitely showing an upward trend. And I just would be interested to know what your thoughts are and TSG on this, and is it something you've got involved with?
Yeah, you're right, Keith. And to be honest, the pandemic has probably brought that more to the forefront, and more retailers are focused now on what other options are there out there. If you can't bring customers into your store, or your store isn't of the inadequate size, then how can you reduce your costs but continue to trade and to go unmanned or partially unmanned? So maybe operate between 9 and 6 as a normal manned fueling station, and then go over to unmanned through the night is an option. And we have seen an increase in activity along those lines. We currently have around about 60 truly unmanned fueling stations around the UK that we have equipped and maintain.
All right.
And they are from total remote control. So we offer, as part of the solution, is that we monitor it remotely. So should there be any issues on site, there is always someone available to talk to the customer via the system. But also we have a solution where remotely we will arm the dispensers. So not anyone can go up and just take a nozzle out and start fueling. We will set that dispenser off after they've checked to make sure that everything's safe to do so. And that really depends on the location and the requirements for that area. Some areas are quite happy with the following of the blue book, as it were, and being able to have emergency monitoring should there be an issue.
Yeah.
But then in other areas, we've had this instance where for any spirit sales, they want them to be remotely armed, and we're able to do that.
That's interesting, and that's where someone like TSG can really score, because different authorities have different rules, and I think it's really important for retailers to know that someone's out there can give them an end-to-end solution, depending on how the local authority views unmanned. And I know from only talking to other people, it varies hugely, doesn't it, across the country?
Yeah, it can do. You're right, it can do, And I think the benefit that we have because of the the amount of unmanned sites that we've got now, pretty much in every county, I would think, we are able to pull across that expertise as well as the knowledge of working with local authorities to make sure that we comply.
Yeah.
And as you know, again, we're able to offer that full turnkey solution where we have our own construction department, we have our own builders, we have our own electricians. So, again, if the customer wants, we can provide the full solution from a knockdown rebuild right the way through to a new design site, along with providing world-class products from Tockheim, Wayne, and also car wash and valet equipment from Karcher.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting subject because, everything we're kind of hearing, particularly now we know that the multiple groups of a pretty large stake now in the UK market, and I think they're going to continue to increasingly look at their networks and say, well, what's the best and optimum way of operating these sites? And yeah, they're still going to look to maybe divest some, but I think before they do that now, there is another option for them. And before divesting sites, maybe unmanned could be the way forward. And interestingly, on that subject of reviewing networks and where we're going, I guess we can't really sort of have a discussion about the industry without talking about alternative fuels and where we think that could be going. And just from our perspective, as you know, I've got the business with Patrick Hudson Fuel Supply Solutions, and we are increasingly getting contacted by investors in the sector, and one of their leading questions is on alternative fuels, and it's a real interesting discussion because roadside retail is definitely being seen by the investors as an opportunity because out of town stores are struggling because of high rents and high street is struggling. So they see roadside retail as remaining as a hub. I mean, we know you've got the convenience offer and that will be there, but going forward, who knows? In 10 years' time, we have unmanned cars. They're going to need to park up somewhere at night and charge. So all these kind of things are coming into the mix. But I guess alternative fuels, be it if we start with electric, we've got hydrogen and we've got synthetic fuels on the horizon. But electric seems to be the one that's got the most traction at the moment. And have TSG got that set up? Have they have a team set up for that kind of thing now? Are you looking at electric seriously?
Yeah, well, we got both divisions that we've been working with for the last 18 months, 2 years possibly on EV now since the rise of the interest in that. So we have an EV division that is headed up by Michelle McChesney, who I know you'll know well, Keith.
Yeah.
And we've also got a gas division, which Paul Brooks heads up. And our strapline which fits nicely in with this subject, is TSG driving new energies. So we're fully aware, and again working with our European company as well, that what is the new legislations coming through, what are the likelihood of the new products coming through, and EV definitely has come on leaps and bounds, and we are doing a lot of work predominantly in the distribution networks at the moment. So where the distribution hubs are, they are looking for the last sort of 20, 25 miles of being electric. So we're currently around the country kitting out a number of distribution depots with EV solutions. So that team is extremely busy at the moment. I think we still have this question mark over existing petrol retail locations as to whether they've got the infrastructure that can actually take EV.
Yeah.
I know there's been a lot, in the industry around that. For a new installation or a new build, it makes absolute sense. And I don't know if you've had chance yet to go to see Peter and Joe Hockenhall's new site, The Stage, in Leicestershire.
No, not yet.
Well, they've installed EV chargers on that site, and it absolutely works. But as I say, for existing petrol retailing, I still think there's a question mark as to whether that is viable.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I think I think there's not a vanilla solution here, but I do think that retailers, particularly multiple retailers, should at least be thinking and planning, doing some network planning, even if in that network planning it discounts it for certain sites. But they should be looking at it because, as you say, it's a complex issue, and it's things like where you are to your nearest substation, etc. And but as I say, it's coming, isn't it? It's not something that can be ignored.
Oh yeah,
And it's interesting that you're still interested looking at the other alternatives as well, which is hydrogen and as I say, synthetic fuels are being seriously considered. But it sounds like TSG are pretty well geared up to work with the retailers, regardless of whatever direction it ends up with.
I like to think so, Keith. I mean, we've brought in experts, gas experts, so LNG, CNG, hydrogen, again, right through from design and build to supply, equipment supply, and maintenance thereafter. We can offer that full package, and there is definitely some growth areas there, and we're working with a number of gas suppliers bringing those solutions forward.
Our view as well is, with all the research we've done, is that we think that regardless of whether a retailer can justify actually having an electric vehicle charging point, I think falling out of it, there'll be some technologies such as smaller battery storage systems, etc., which a retailer will get the benefit from by storing energy on site and using it when the tariffs fit his needs, and can definitely save money. So I think out of this whole kind of movement to electric, there will be some benefits for the retailer, but they will need a TSG of this world to help them on the way with installations, etc.
We hope so, Keith. Yes, indeed.
Well, it's been good to have a catch up, Steve. I know because there's not been any events this year and etc. We would normally have done this over a beer, but it's really good just to find out what's happening with TSG in these troubled times. Really.
No, I totally agree, and I look forward to taking up on that offer of the beer. It'd be good to get back out to some kind of normality, and just wanted to thank you for inviting me to join this podcast.
Well, Keith, Steve, thank you so much for that discussion. I'm hopeful that we can make that beer happen at a Petro Forum event sooner rather than later. But yes, thanks you once again for that discussion. Plenty in there for our listeners to think about, I think. Before you go, I've got a couple quick-fire questions for you both that we ask all of our guests on this show. The first one is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received? Keith, maybe we could start with you.
The best piece of advice I ever received was from my dad, and he said to me, always make your own mind up about people, regardless of what people say about other people. Until you make your own mind up about them, you should always do that.
I like that one. I wish I had that one. It goes back a bit. When I first got into management, I had an extremely good mentor in an MD that I worked for, and his advice to me was, never be afraid to fail. If you never fail, you're not trying hard enough. And I think that has worked well right the way through my career, and I try to pass that on whenever I can.
I totally agree with that, and to add to that, I would say that if you don't fail, you can't really learn.
Totally
because you
agree.
learn from your mistakes, don't you? So yeah, thanks for that. And lastly, I'm asking everyone for a book recommendation, please. Keith, what are you reading at the moment?
Oh, a book called I've finished it now, but I found it quite inspiring. It's a book called Humans by I think it's Mark Haig or Martin Haig. I can't remember now, but it's a very good book, Human.
Thank you. And Steve, how about yourself?
Well, I've gone back a few years now. I've picked up James Hunt's autobiography, and it's taken me right back to the 70s or middle to late 70s. He was world champion in 76, and it was really when I got right involved with Formula One and high octane and everything else. So it's been a brilliant read and a nostalgic trip back down memory lane. So I would recommend that to anyone.
Amazing. And you'll be watching the Russian Grand Prix this weekend then as well?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again to both of you guys. I really appreciate it, and have yourself a lovely weekend.
Thank you, Kiana, and you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you for tuning in to Open Room Talks. We hope that you've enjoyed the episode. For inquiries, please feel free to get in touch via email on hello@openroomevents.com. For details on future episodes, please follow us on LinkedIn or visit openroomevents.com. Until next time.